The lights dimmed slightly, and a charged silence settled over the auditorium. It wasn't the kind of silence that signaled boredom. It was the kind that came before something big. The kind that stretched thick in the air, heavy with expectation. Every seat was filled, yet no one moved. No one whispered. No one scrolled through their phones. Every pair of eyes was locked on the stage, waiting. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a voice murmured, "Here he comes." A ripple of movement near the side of the stage. A shadow. Then, stepping into the light, Elon Musk. He didn't rush. He didn't wave. He didn't need to. The moment he appeared, the atmosphere shifted. Cameras clicked. A few murmurs ran through the audience, but most people just watched, waiting for what was about to unfold. Because everyone knew, when Musk speaks, things change. Musk rested both hands on the podium, scanning the audience before speaking. His usual half-smirk played on his lips as he tilted his head slightly. "You know," he began, his voice carrying easily through the silent room. "I was running a bit late because I got distracted thinking about colonizing Mars." A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. He let the laughter settle before continuing. "But seriously," he said, leaning forward slightly, "I think about it every day. Because if we don't push forward, if we don't take risks, then what's the point?" The audience listened intently, drawn in by his casual yet commanding presence. Musk had a way of making the extraordinary feel within reach, as if launching rockets and creating self-driving cars were just things anyone could do if they tried hard enough. "We're living in a time where technology is evolving faster than ever," he continued, his tone shifting into something more deliberate. "AI, robotics, clean energy, these aren't things for the distant future. They're happening now." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle before moving on. "Tesla is proving that sustainable energy isn't just an idea, it's a necessity. We're moving toward a world where gas-powered cars will be relics of the past. SpaceX is showing that reusable rockets can take us beyond Earth. And Neuralink." He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "We're going to connect the human brain with AI. That's not science fiction anymore." The crowd erupted into applause. Some people sat in stunned silence, absorbing what he was saying. "But here's the problem," Musk said, his expression darkening slightly. "For every step forward, there are forces trying to pull us back. Regulations that stifle innovation. Corporate interests that don't want change. Social media platforms that amplify fear over progress." The energy in the room shifted. Some people nodded in agreement, others whispered among themselves. Musk wasn't here to make everyone comfortable. He was here to challenge them. "I know some people don't like me," he continued, his voice unwavering. "I get it. Billionaire, CEO, whatever label you want to use. But the truth is, I'm not doing this for money. If I cared about that, I wouldn't be putting everything I have into ideas that could fail." A murmur swept through the crowd. He had their full attention now. "The world doesn't change by playing it safe," Musk said, gripping the podium. "It changes when people decide to take risks, to build, to dream beyond what's realistic." He paused, his eyes scanning the room again. "Look around you. Everything you see, these lights, the screens, the cameras, it all exists because someone, somewhere, decided to go against what was normal at the time. The future isn't written by people who accept things as they are. It's written by those who ask, what if?" The audience erupted again, applause echoing through the auditorium. Musk stood firm, waiting for the noise to settle before delivering his next words. "But not everyone wants progress," he added, his tone dropping slightly. "Some people would rather see things stay the same. They think questioning the system is dangerous." A hush fell over the room. Musk let the silence linger before saying, "And that's where things get interesting." He leaned back slightly, a knowing glint in his eyes. The crowd could feel it. Something big was coming. The moment hung in the air, thick with anticipation. Musk had just delivered a statement that left the crowd deep in thought. But before he could continue, a sharp voice cut through the silence. "That's easy for you to say, Elon." Heads turned. A murmur rippled through the audience as people shifted in their seats, trying to locate the source. A man near the back, standing with his arms crossed, had spoken up. His tone was challenging, almost confrontational. "You talk about changing the world, but all you care about is making billions. What about the people struggling right now?" The room tensed. Some attendees frowned, others glanced at Musk, waiting for his reaction. A few exchanged knowing looks. There was always one person at these events who tried to take him down. Musk didn't flinch. He remained at the podium, still and composed, his expression unreadable. The man continued, emboldened by the silence. "You claim to push humanity forward, but your companies exploit workers. You're not some kind of hero, you're just another rich guy playing God with technology." Scattered whispers spread through the crowd. Some people sighed, annoyed by the disruption, while others seemed genuinely curious about what Musk would say. Journalists leaned forward, sensing a moment worth capturing. For a few seconds, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of cameras rolling. The weight of the challenge lingered, daring Musk to respond. A woman near the front shook her head and muttered, "Here we go." Musk finally moved. He tilted his head slightly, as if considering the words carefully. Then, he exhaled, stepping away from the podium for a moment. Instead of snapping back, instead of dismissing the heckler like many expected, he did something unexpected. He smiled. Not a forced, defensive grin, but the kind that said he had heard this argument 100 times before. "Interesting point," he said, his voice steady. "But let me ask you something. If I was really just in this for money, why am I spending billions on problems most people are afraid to touch?" The crowd shifted again. Some nodded, waiting for more. The heckler narrowed his eyes, but Musk wasn't done. "I could have stayed in Silicon Valley, made a simple app, and retired on a yacht. But I didn't," Musk continued, his tone calm but firm. "Because I actually care about solving real problems, even when it's difficult, even when people like you say it's impossible." The tension in the room didn't disappear, but something had changed. Musk wasn't dodging the question. He was meeting it head-on. Musk let the question hang in the air for a moment, his gaze scanning the room. The silence stretched, thick with expectation. Some in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, while others leaned in, waiting to see how he would handle it. The heckler stood firm, arms crossed, his expression defiant. Instead of rushing to respond, Musk took a slow breath, adjusting his stance slightly. He wasn't rattled. If anything, he seemed amused. "You know," he said finally, his voice even, "it's interesting you say that." A ripple of murmurs moved through the audience. He didn't sound defensive, nor did he try to brush it off. He was engaging, not avoiding. "You're right about one thing," Musk continued, resting his hands on the podium. "People are struggling. There are real issues that need to be solved. And I could take the easy route, sit back, enjoy the wealth, and not bother with any of this." His tone remained calm, but there was a weight behind his words. The heckler narrowed his eyes, expecting a polished excuse. But Musk didn't give one. "I didn't have to start Tesla," he went on. "Nobody was asking for it. In fact, when we started, people laughed at the idea of electric cars going mainstream. They said it was impossible." He let that sink in before continuing. "SpaceX? Same thing. Private companies weren't supposed to send rockets into orbit. We were told we'd never make it work. Too expensive. Too difficult. Too ambitious." He shrugged slightly. "Now, NASA uses our rockets." A few in the crowd chuckled, while others nodded. Musk wasn't bragging, he was stating facts. "So, when you say I don't care, I have to ask, what does caring look like to you?" He gestured with one hand. "Because if it means doing nothing and just talking about problems instead of solving them, then yeah, I guess I don't care in that way." The heckler's expression flickered, but Musk didn't pause. "I get it," he said. "Some people don't like me. They see a billionaire and assume greed. They think money is the only motivation. But if profit was the goal, why would I risk everything, multiple times, on ideas that could fail?" He stepped away from the podium slightly, looking around. I could have stuck with PayPal, retired comfortably, lived an easy life. But instead, I put everything I had into companies that, at the time, had a high chance of failing. The crowd was quiet, absorbing his words. And you know what? Musk smirked slightly. They almost did. Tesla was weeks away from bankruptcy. SpaceX had 3 failed launches before we got it right. I slept on the factory floor, worked insane hours, and put my own money in when investors backed out. A murmur ran through the audience. Some had heard parts of this story before, but hearing it now, in this moment, felt different. So, tell me again, Musk said, turning back toward the heckler. Do I seem like someone who's just in it for the money? The room tensed. The heckler didn't respond, but Musk wasn't done. I don't expect people to agree with everything I say or do, he admitted. But I do expect people to think for themselves. Because it's easy to criticize from the sidelines. It's harder to build something, to take risks, to actually change things. He let that settle, then added, so if you don't like the way I'm doing it, great. Go build something better. A few in the audience clapped. Then more joined. The energy in the room was shifting again, tilting back in Musk's favor. He glanced at the heckler one last time. Or, he added with a small grin, you can just keep shouting from the back while the rest of us try to move forward. The crowd erupted. Laughter, cheers, a few standing ovations. The heckler, realizing he had lost the moment, shifted in place but said nothing. Musk stepped back to the podium, waiting for the noise to die down. Then, with a slight nod, he said, "Now, where was I?" The room stood still for a moment, the weight of Musk's words settling in. It was as if the air had thickened, pressing down on the crowd as they processed what had just unfolded. The heckler, once confident and loud, had gone silent. His earlier defiance seemed to shrink under the sheer force of Musk's response. Then, a single clap echoed from the middle of the audience. Another followed. Within seconds, the entire room erupted into applause. Some people jumped to their feet, cheering, while others nodded in quiet approval. A few exchanged glances, whispering to each other as if confirming they had just witnessed something remarkable. Musk remained at the podium, relaxed, his hands resting on the sides as he let the reaction play out. He didn't need to add anything. The moment spoke for itself. The crowd wasn't just applauding a clever comeback. They were responding to something deeper. Musk's words had struck a chord. Many in the room had seen powerful figures dodge tough questions, offering polished responses designed to please everyone while saying nothing of substance. But Musk had done the opposite. He had confronted the challenge head-on, without hesitation, without fear. Near the front row, a journalist scribbled furiously in her notebook, struggling to capture the energy in the room. Others in the press section adjusted their cameras, ensuring they recorded every detail. They knew this wasn't just another keynote. It was the kind of moment that would dominate headlines. Among the standing audience, an older man with graying hair shook his head, smiling. "That's why people listen to him," he muttered to the person beside him. "He doesn't back down." A few rows away, a younger man in a Tesla jacket grinned, nudging his friend. "Man, did you see that? He shut that guy down without even trying." The heckler, now visibly uncomfortable, shifted on his feet. His earlier confidence had drained away, replaced with an awkward stiffness. He looked around, as if hoping for support, but found none. The energy of the room had moved on without him. Musk finally leaned back into the microphone, his expression unreadable. The noise was still settling, but he didn't rush to speak. He let the moment stretch, knowing that silence, when used right, could be just as powerful as words. When the applause began to fade, he finally spoke. "I think that's enough drama for the night," he said with a slight smirk. Laughter rippled through the crowd, easing the last remnants of tension. He exhaled, then added, "Now, where were we?" The energy in the room still crackled long after the moment had passed. Musk had shifted seamlessly back into his speech, but the impact of his response lingered. The crowd, still charged from the exchange, hung on to his words with even greater intensity. Some listened with newfound respect. Others replayed the moment in their minds, knowing they had just witnessed something that wouldn't be forgotten anytime soon. In the press section, reporters typed furiously, fingers flying across keyboards as they crafted their headlines. Some framed it as a bold defense. Others saw it as a calculated move. A few journalists exchanged glances, already knowing how this would be spun in different corners of the media. Some would paint Musk as the unshakable visionary who silenced his critics with logic and confidence. Others would argue he had dodged the real issue, using charisma to win over the crowd instead of providing a direct answer. But outside of the media's analysis, the public had its own reaction. Within minutes, clips of the exchange flooded social media. Posts dissecting Musk's words spread like wildfire. Supporters praised his composure, calling it a masterclass in handling criticism. "This is why he's different," one comment read. "He doesn't dodge, he stands his ground." Others admired his ability to turn the moment into something bigger. "Whether you agree with him or not," another user wrote, "you have to respect the way he owns the conversation." Of course, not everyone saw it that way. Critics insisted he had sidestepped the real issue, claiming his response was more about theatrics than substance. "Classic Musk," one post read. "Smart enough to avoid answering directly, but confident enough to make people cheer anyway." Debates erupted online, with some arguing over whether he had actually addressed the concern or simply overwhelmed the heckler with a commanding presence. Meanwhile, major news outlets scrambled to release their takes. Some praised Musk's quick wit and direct approach, calling it another example of why he remains a dominant force in the tech world. Others suggested the exchange raised questions about his leadership and whether his vision truly accounted for the struggles of everyday people. But regardless of the angle, one thing was clear: everyone was talking about it. Back in the auditorium, the heckler had taken his seat, his earlier confidence noticeably absent. He had come in hoping to put Musk on the spot, to catch him off guard in front of an audience. Instead, he had become just another part of a conversation that was now far bigger than himself. Musk, unfazed by the chaos his words had sparked, continued speaking as if nothing unusual had happened. But he knew that moments like these were what separated leaders from figureheads, doors from talkers. As the event wrapped up and people slowly made their way out, the conversation didn't stop. Groups lingered in the halls, discussing what they had just seen. Some replayed it on their phones. Others debated whether Musk's response was strategic or simply natural instinct. A few stood quietly, taking in the realization that they had just witnessed a defining moment in real time. Musk left the stage as casually as he had arrived. No extra theatrics, no victory lap. For him, it wasn't about winning an argument. It was about making people think. And as the world continued dissecting, debating, and discussing, one thing became clear: his words, his presence, and his vision weren't going anywhere anytime soon. As the night came to an end, the weight of what had just happened still lingered in the air. It wasn't just another speech. It wasn't just another exchange between a public figure and a critic. It was something more, a moment that forced people to stop, listen, and think. Musk had done what few in his position ever dared to do. He didn't dodge, he didn't deflect, and he certainly didn't crumble under pressure. Instead, he took the challenge, flipped it, and made it about something bigger than himself. He didn't just defend his work. He reminded everyone why he does it in the first place. The heckler had walked in thinking he could corner Musk, put him on the spot, maybe even shake his confidence. But instead, he became part of the story that only made Musk's message stronger. Because in the end, this wasn't about proving a point to one critic. It was about standing firm in the face of doubt, pushing forward when others say it's impossible, and refusing to let outside noise drown out a vision for the future. People left that night with more than just quotes and headlines. They left with a reminder of what it takes to lead, to innovate, and to build something that lasts. Because real change doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from taking risks, embracing criticism, and staying true to a purpose, even when the world pushes back. Musk knew that. And whether people agreed with him or not, one thing was certain: his voice, his ideas, and his impact weren't going anywhere. The conversation was far from over. It was just getting started.